Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Robert Barr, and I'm pleased you're joining me and each other for this streaming Shabbat service. Clearly, we are living in challenging and difficult times, and this is a chance for us to pause, to catch our breath, and to remember what is most important in our lives. For 6 days we speak, and tonight we listen. 6 days we build. Tonight, we rest. 6 days, we take care of others. Tonight, we nurture ourselves. 6 days, we work to change our world. Tonight, we are renewed by what is eternal. 6 days, we plan for the future. Tonight, we are enveloped in the present. 6 days, we eat and drink in haste. Tonight, we savor the taste of bread and wine and feel the bond of the world that feeds us. 6 days, we teach. Tonight, we learn. 6 days, we hear the clamor. Tonight, we listen for clarity. 6 days, we struggle to expand our influence. Tonight, we're dissolved in a greater influence. 6 days, we focus our vision on the task at hand. Tonight, we look beyond what we can see. May each of us find our Sabbath peace. Shabbat Shalom. Again, I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth. That's the bricks and mortar congregation here in Greater Cincinnati, and our Jewish community, our online congregation. For over 10 years, we've been online, streaming services, sharing the voice of Judaism that we give expression to here in Greater Cincinnati with people around the world. It's been wonderful, it's been unique, and it's been exciting to meet so many people. And this age of COVID, when the pandemic is forcing us to socially distant, being online has become even more important. It allows us to know that we are part of something greater than ourselves, a community of people that share ideas and values together. And it's those values and those ideas that are so important to what we've been doing here in Greater Cincinnati at Congregation Beth for 40 years. We give voice to a bold, dynamic Judaism, a Judaism that recognizes we're not like our ancestors. The events of history have shaped our vision. Science and information has changed the way we understand what it means to even be human, our place on this earth and our place within the universe. As a function of this new information and the new insights and history, it is incumbent upon us to keep creating a Judaism that is relevant and vibrant. That's why we've recreated the liturgy to speak to who we are and what we believe. Our ancestors created a Judaism reflective of them, and we have the right and the responsibility to do the same, to pass on to future generations a strong, dynamic, bold Judaism. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're sharing this Shabbat with me and each other. Feel free to chat. You can chat on any of the platforms, whether it's on our Facebook pages or on our website. Always when you chat, please be inclusive. Remember that we are reaching people and talking to people around the world and within our own communities. And we always want everyone to feel welcomed. And even though not everyone's chatting, there are people who are reading. So really do that. And also let us know where you're participating from. I also recognize that not everyone can watch our services at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time when they're first streamed. We know lots of people watch them in the archives. So whenever you're here, you are part of our community. So we continue our service with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. On Shabbat, we light the candles. Candles bring forth warmth, illuminating the darkness. Candles offer us warmth, providing comfort. Candles awaken us as we reach for possibilities. As we light these candles, let us see their light to stretch beyond ourselves, touching others, bettering our world. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or ba'Shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath. For those of you who participate in our high holiday services this year, you know they were different. We streamed them fully like we're streaming this Shabbat service, and we shortened them. And one of the things that got cut out of the service was the chance for the president of Congregation Beth Adam to speak to everyone. So I invited her, Rachel Smith, to have a conversation with me, and I'm sharing it with you now. This year, as a function of COVID and the pandemic, we did them fully online. And as a function of that, a tradition that had been in place for many, many years, we had to skip. And that was that the president of the congregation, who is currently Rachel Smith, never got to offer any remarks. And it has bothered me since September. Rachel's been very busy, and we finally were able to arrange a time to chat. So rather than being a president who only gets like 3 minutes for the holiday, Rachel, you're going to get we get dozens of minutes that we're going to chat. So I appreciate you being here, and want to say Rachel's the president of Beth Adam, has served on the board. She is a professor of legal writing, advocacy, and ethics at the University of Cincinnati. You were associate at Dinsmore and Scholl, a law firm here in Cincinnati. You were also an assistant attorney general in the office of the Wyoming Attorney General, representing Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality, Water Quality Division. So you've done you've had a vast array of experience, but you are a Cincinnatian, correct?
That's right. I mostly grew up in Cincinnati, and then I came back after about 17 years.
You missed the food, you missed your family.
Skyline Chili. And my parents are still here, so they're still in Clifton. My father taught at the University of Cincinnati, so we came back. Once we started to have children, we were living in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which I loved, but it's a small city and a pretty homogenous city, and so I thought Cincinnati had more to offer.
So that's great. Well, that's wonderful. And you've been a member of the congregation for a long time. I'm trying to think how many years, because both your kids had a bar and bat mitzvah at Beth Adam, and they grew up in the congregation, and then they're serving on the board. So we just want to chat about why are you serving on the board? Were you willing to accept that responsibility, and then the big responsibility of serving as the president of the congregation?
Well, first with the president of the board, you did have me, before COVID, you did have me come over to your apartment, and I think you served me snacks.
Did I serve? That's very funny. I bribed you with food. I'm sure they're chocolate. I have no doubt.
That works. But I feel very thankful for Beth Adam, and my parents are in Cincinnati and will probably stay here as long as they're in Cincinnati. But one of the big draws for us to continue to live in Cincinnati has been Beth Adam. In fact, when my kids were little, my husband Mike and I would talk about where do we want to live, where do we want to go, and we kept coming back to one of the reasons we like Cincinnati, and one of the reasons we are committed to stay here is because of Beth Adam. And then after a few years thinking, well, if it's so important to us, what are we doing about that? For a while, Mike, my husband, who did not grow up Jewish and is not actually Jewish, he taught Sunday school at Beth Adam.
I remember that.
And which is amazing, because he had actually been someone who was not very interested in organized religion, but Beth Adam just satisfied something we needed. And so after that, I thought, well, it's probably my turn, since we're raising the children Jewish for me. What am I going to give back to my congregation? I had the opportunity to work on a few committees, and luckily people on the board who knew me invited me to be on the board, and it seemed like the responsible thing to do. And then similarly, after several years on the board, when I was invited to be the president, again, I feel this is so important. It is my turn to step up and take responsibility.
Well, I mean, as the rabbi, I really appreciate it. I mean, I think the role of people to serve on the board, to take leadership roles is incredibly important because the congregation is dependent. I mean, rabbis, we have a particular task, a job to do, but really ultimately the board is the body that holds the values, mission, vision, and values of the congregation, sets the policies, and so that you're willing to take this on in the midst of all your other work is really, really appreciated. And it's been a strange, complicated year. We all know we're living in the world at the time of COVID, and your presidency began, I guess, technically July 1 is when it turns over, and we had to make some really challenging decisions about COVID, and that's in fact why you didn't get to speak. And we at the high holidays, because we decided to be fully online, and we continue to be fully online. What's it like being around some of these conversations around the board table about, we knew we were closing, but we don't know when we're opening? How does that feel? And being a faculty member, you're dealing with the same thing on a university level too.
Right. And the university is different. It's a lot bigger. It has different concerns, but those conversations are tough, especially at Beth Adam, where we're trying to make plans, but even up through now, we just don't have complete information. And so it made sense to close the building and function remotely, but do we know when that's going to change? We have no idea. So those conversations are strange, although we have been, I think, really congenial about it. Everyone seems to agree that the risks to ourselves and our members and our staff and our rabbis, it's not worth it to take that risk. And so remote makes sense, although we are sacrificing so much of what was important to us and those connections that we all value.
Right.
But I think it's working really well, thanks to you and Melissa and David. And we're actually, in some ways, getting more than we used to. I know you're probably working more than you used to.
A little bit.
Yeah.
We've added, and it's interesting, we've added programming. So we have both the streaming service that we're participating in right now, and then a Zoom Shabbat service. So we have two different Shabbat services on a Friday night. So we've added that, and we've added Coffee Talk, which is this morning coffee, informal at 8:30 for a half hour, non-political, non-medical, just a chance. So we've added things, and David, Rabbi Burstein, has added meditations. And one of the challenges is going to be, and at some point we're going to need to put this as a conversation around the board table and with members, is what things are we going to keep and what things are we going to leave on the road of COVID, if you will, on the side.
Right. And that's tough because everything we've added, I know I love. I haven't been able to go to coffee morning chats for quite a while once work started up again, but I loved it. And actually, I'd love to plug it. I would love if we could continue to do that forever, but it maybe doesn't make sense. Maybe it does. And similarly with the meditations that Rabbi Burstein's been offering, what a great service to have available for regular life too.
Right. And I think I think COVID challenged us all, challenged the congregation to recreate is too big a word, to rethink how we share our community with people. How do we teach? How do we reach out? How do we support? Which is all the roles that we would always play historically, just strictly in a bricks and mortar, and how we're bringing that to online fully. And then as we're beginning to think about, and we're only beginning to think about when we might re-enter the building now that the vaccine has been rolled out, is what do we keep and what do we discard? And the other piece of it as well is where we've always had an online component, our online members, our community has become stronger as a function of this. People who perhaps didn't think about visiting before because of distance, in the world where everyone's trapped at home and you're watching online, why not watch an online place that may be further away? But it doesn't feel any different to watch an online place that's 100 miles away or 1,000 miles away or a mile away. And how we're going to include them in our community is a conversation we're having right now.
Right. I mean, this really does force us to be creative in our thinking. And in the old online participation, it was much more passive, where now some of the folks who are not in Cincinnati can participate, and it's interactive. In some ways, way more interactive than it used to be. And we don't want to take that away from people. We also don't want to lose that connection we have with these people.
Right. And absolutely. So that's a conversation, because I know some folks have asked us about online membership or being a member, out of town member, and what does that mean? And we're really beginning to look at what does that mean and what services we can provide over and above the specifics, religious, a Shabbat service or adult education. So it's a complicated conversation that we're beginning to do, and even the technology is going to get more complicated. This is one of the things that we're working on right now, is that when we move back into the building in order to teach a class, it's going to be both people who are physically in the building and people who are going to be online. And how do we manage all that? What are all the necessary pieces of that? And how do we pay for that?
Right.
That's the president. I said that was for you. Presidents worry about money and congregation.
Thank you. And yet, since I do teach at the university has, maybe we can learn from some things they do, where we had at the University of Cincinnati this fall, some programs in person, some programs were hybrid. My classes moved entirely from the classroom to online settings. But so maybe people have figured out what works well and what the glitches are, what the challenges are, what the most effective technology is, and we can learn from that.
Right. I think we're going to wind up doing exactly that, looking at what people are doing, but in addition to it, the reality is this will have added a new element to the congregation. It wasn't welcome. No one wanted the pandemic, but it did it did accelerate conversations. Probably they were taking place on lots of fronts, and it challenged us to open up in a way we wouldn't have likely. It would just because we wouldn't have thought of it. And then how does that feel, and how does that fit in with the long-term mission, vision, values of the congregation?
Exactly.
So it's an interesting responsibility, and about what does that mean, and the board's responsibility really technically is to hold the vision of the congregation, and really when it's a board really is trying to make sure that all the things that are happening in a congregation are reflective of that.
True.
So,
and meanwhile, though, having the board meetings on the web, we use Zoom, but I know everyone's dealing with this at work. It just makes everything a little bit more awkward, not to talk over each other, who's muted, who's not, where I really wish we could just be in a room and work together, but it's going to be a while.
Yeah, that's because you've had to learn to manage the board meetings. It's not quite the same thing when everyone's online and trying to it just changed the nature of the conversation.
Right. And being the president, I can never tune out. I have to be on all the time.
Mm-hmm. Plus, I'm chatting with you. I'm people are sending you chats, and you're trying to manage all of that.
That's right.
What do you think what do you think the long-term challenges of congregations are? Have you of all kinds, not just specifically Beth Adam, but
Sure.
the Jewish?
I really have no idea, except that we noticed over the last few years the notion of joining or community was already changing. People were less likely to join. People like more of an a la carte kind of participation throughout their lives, not just in their religious associations, but in clubs and sports and synagogues. And so with this, in some ways, it's made it easier for people to live that way, that if you want to participate in something, you pop onto a webinar, Zoom meeting, because we don't go anywhere anymore. What does it mean for the future? I really don't know, but I think it's going to have an impact.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What do you think?
Well, I think you said you're going to say. I think this is what you raised, and we've talked about on and off for several years now, is the notion of membership and its the relationship that people have with congregations is changing and will continue to change. And it's complicated because really when we say membership, in part what we're also saying is finances. I mean, we need to be frank about that. The
Right.
idea is that members support congregations so that they can exist, and members pay dues and they make donations depending on the structure. And when we're talking about it is, how do we ensure the financial security of a congregation over the long term as these patterns are changing? And how do you enforce it? What does that mean? People used to join gyms for a year. Now they're joining gyms for an hour. Mm-hmm. Congregations, it's hard to do that modeling. And I think we see in Jewish publications, people writing about it. And I don't have a good answer. I mean, I think I don't have a good answer. I think the hope is that people who value an institution will, whether they sign on the dotted line, will financially support the institution, because without the financial support, it doesn't exist. But I've not figured that out. And does somebody who's a member get more, I guess is the question, than somebody who's just a supporter? And these are conversations that we're having, and they're not easy.
Right.
As a rabbi, I want to make sure, I would love to help everyone and support everyone, but the reality is I work for the congregation. If Beth Adam didn't exist, I would be in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'd be likely somewhere else. Right.
And I know when I use services online, just general services, something even like Wikipedia, they occasionally go out and say specifically, please support us. But other times I think, well, I use this service a lot, I should contribute to it. Mm-hmm. Maybe synagogues are going to be like that, where we put kind of requests for donations under everything we do, and we keep doing a lot of online activities.
Yeah, we have to look at all those things. I mean, this is part of the conversation, because that's part of the board's responsibility. The rabbi is involved in those conversations, and it's important. But ultimately, the board is really responsible for the long-term financial health of the congregation and making choices. There are things that we want to do that we can't do it sometimes. Financially, we say, no, we're not going to do this, or yes, let's push forward on this. So that it's reflective of our values and what we're hoping for. So it is a lot of work to be on a board. I don't dismiss it. I appreciate it, and it's hard because it's one more layer. But it's great, and maybe we can get Mike come back to teach religious school. We're moving. That's because we're moving out. We're doing this outdoor space, and Mike worked in the outdoors for quite a long time.
That's right. He would be good at that. I think he's probably a little sad he's missing out on Pirates this year.
That's right.
That would be fun. But if I could back up for just 1 second about, we were talking about finances and our vision and values, and sometimes giving things up, because I do want to reiterate that when it comes to our values, being inclusive always was the most important thing. So where we might sacrifice opportunities because we would rather have people connected to the synagogue, even if they can't afford it. So that's just one thing I wanted to emphasize.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. We've always wanted to be a fully inclusive and interfaith couples. So, I mean, that's been,
and that's been really important to us, that we both felt welcome. We never felt like we were doing Judaism wrong, which, even as someone who was raised Jewish, went to synagogue as a kid, had a bat mitzvah, there are certain situations in my life where I was made to feel like I wasn't quite Jewish enough. And so when I show up with my husband, who's not Jewish, and my children who do identify as Jewish, that we're never wrong at Beth Adam. And we really appreciate that.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad maybe this will become the new Beth Adam tradition, rather than presidents just getting 3 minutes at Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to offer their thoughts. Presidents get, a streaming service. And I'm guessing if you want to, I'll even let you come back as the president, you get to do that
Thank you.
anytime you want.
I will still be president next high holidays too.
Okay, so then you for sure we're going to do part 2. So mark it in your calendar right now. And I appreciate you doing that. And you take care and be well and be safe and stay healthy.
Thank you. You too, Rabbi.
Beth Adam is fortunate to have such a dynamic president, Rachel Smith. She has added so much to our congregation, and particularly during this challenging time of COVID and the pandemic, when we had to change the way we operate, she has given of herself, her insights, her time, her dedication to help make sure our congregation functions well. Having strong lay leaders like Rachel and all the members of our board has made Beth Adam the congregation that it is. And I appreciate the work of those volunteers and all the volunteers who help to make sure that Beth Adam is the best congregation that it can be. So I want to thank Rachel and all of them for their efforts, their work, and their dedication. We turn now to our memorial. It is our custom here at Beth Adam and our Jewish community to once a month remember those individuals, loved ones who have died. For as the cycle of life unfolds, just as we rejoice in new life, we mourn its final ending. The inevitable death of those whose lives have touched ours. Today we join voices with others as we say aloud the words which help us to recall those we've lost. We remember the moments we've shared, the laughter and the tears, the beauty and the pain. Inevitably, as our lives intertwined, as we have touched one another, we've been influenced, changed, enriched by their presence. And so, as we mourn their loss, we celebrate their life. Thus, the cycle continues. Their lives are marking the continued unfolding of our own. We pause at this time to reflect upon those who are no longer among us. This moment of remembrance links life to life and generation to generation. And tonight we recall those the anniversary of whose death occurs in this month of January. Samuel Barr, Willie Bernstein, Jenny Brenner, Harold Brown, Jack Buteau, Ben Cooper, Molly Cooper, Olip Danoff, Lyda Donges, Marian Edwards, Abraham Frank, Norman Ganson, Benjamin Garvin, Esther Garvin, Eve Garvin, Nate Garvin, Janet Gilbert, Maury Goldberg, Elaine S. Graff, Fred Graff, Joyce Hyman, Judith Page Hoffman, Conrad Bill Jordan, Sam Kaufman, Samuel Klein, Sarah Epstein Klein, Charles Laporte, Florence Laporte, Jack Lemkin, Mary W. Levin, Ruth Levin, Harold Markle, Randy Milberg, George Miller, Irene Miller, Daniel Osher, Michael Pritz, Sylvia Friedman Rothman, Ricky Rosen, Ralph Rudman, Rose Sachs, Harry Sands, Louis Schulman, Joseph Schumacher, Benjamin S. Schwartz, Larry Selker, Alice Shallett, Isaac Abraham Simon, Rebecca Bayer Simon, Janelle Stewart, Lottie Stoller, Sal E. Swan, Valenus Tyler, Jean Vieser, Cheryl Wallace, William Wolfe, Estelle Evelyn Wolfson, Rhoda Gould. We remember their memories and recall too the hundreds of thousands of individuals in the United States and the hundreds of thousands of people around the world who have died from COVID. We think too of those who've died as a result of violence and terror that mars our world. We think of those who died defending the principles of justice and of peace and democracy. We think of those who died as a result of war, famine, and genocide. We think of those who have no one to recall them this night. And we think of all our loved ones whom death has taken from us. Ein b'dei hamavet hakoach la'akor ma shetabun balev. Death cannot take that which is locked in our hearts. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. With our courage and our strength, we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Beauty created, wisdom shared is not lost. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. Im dama'ot be'einenu, be'et evlenu, nishmor al zecher achuvenu. With our tears in our sorrow, we remember. Zeker tzadik livracha. May the memory of good people bless our days. Let Sabbath be a time for believing in what could be and seeing with new eyes. In this serious world, let us take ourselves less seriously. In these harsh times, let us listen for a soothing word. While the world around us unfolds in an instant, let us judge each other a little more slowly. Let Sabbath shine a light into a corner of ourselves where hope's renewed. Let us remember a reason to be joyful and our way to be gentle. Let the Sabbath be a time for opening up. Let us find strength in our dreams and trust in our strength. And then we share a virtual challah and wine as a symbol that we want to be together and that in fact we are a community. So if you have some bread or a cracker, pull it out. In Jewish tradition, we share the challah as we celebrate the Sabbath. We're reminded that challah, a twisted loaf of bread, sustains and nurtures the life of our bodies. May the sharing of the challah sustain and nurture our hunger for knowledge and understanding of the world around us. May the sharing of challah sustain and nurture our connection to those close by and those separated by distance and by time. May the sharing of the challah encourage us to reach out to those across our rooms, across the hallways, across our desks, and across the miles. May the sharing of the challah strengthen and enrich the coming weeks. Baruch Hamal Kapenu, blessed is the work of our hands. Baruch Hazon Ha'adam, blessed is the vision of our minds. Baruch Lechem Ha'aretz, blessed is the bread of the earth. And then if you have wine or juice, join with me. On Shabbat, it's our custom to share wine and juice with family, friends, and community. It reminds us that it's not enough for us to quench our physical thirst. We must nourish our spirit as well. As we celebrate Shabbat, may this wine remind us to live our lives to the fullest and to embrace the joys and pleasures that life offers. Bruchim chachayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim chachayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within us. And so we say, l'chaim, it's a life. So I'm delighted you were able to share this Shabbat with me and with each other. This Sunday is, or Monday actually, is Martin Luther King Day, Jr. Day in the United States of America. And on Sunday, I will be giving the sermon at Zion Baptist Church in Cincinnati. It's actually a virtual service. I've participated in this service for many, many years, 10 years or more. And I was invited by Pastor Cantrell to give the sermon. And I am really very honored. And I invite you to join me. You can go to the service. It's on Sunday at 11 o'clock, 11 Eastern time here in Cincinnati. It's a virtual service. What you can do is go to bethadam.org. And there on our homepage, there is the information about the service and the link to get to Zion Baptist Church. You can also look that up if you want. Zion Baptist Church here in Cincinnati, and be a participant on Martin Luther King Day. Because I know for so many of us, given the pandemic, we're socially distancing, where all of our behaviors have changed. So this would be a way for you to participate in this important day. Also, by going to bethadam.org, you'll see their upcoming events. You'll be able to listen to my podcast, look at some of the materials that we're doing in our social justice community, the kind of work we're doing here at Bethadam. So I encourage you to go there as well. And I hope you'll join me next Shabbat for our service once more. And we end with the words we end with each week. May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. May this Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. Shabbat Shalom.